Hello, it's a third line day and we are in gate 5, the gate of fixed rhythms, the gate of waiting. The third line is called compulsiveness. When we get to the third line, it has a very intense name, this compulsiveness. We know the third line is about trial and error. One of the things to recognize about that's everyone who has the 5-3 is always convinced that their rhythm is a mistake. If they're lying flat on their back and they can't move a muscle, then that's a mistake. And they're sure that they should be doing something. If they are running around like a mad thing, then they can't stop running around and they're convinced that that's a mistake because they're sure that they actually should be on holiday somewhere lying flat on the back, doing nothing. The lifetime learning here is the fear engendered by the sense of helplessness resulting in unnecessary stress and activity. So they have great difficulty in accepting what their natural rhythm is, because there is always this sense that there's something wrong with it. The fear engendered by the sense of helplessness, resulting in unnecessary stress. This sense of helplessness, I have this rhythm and I'm stuck with it, and I don't really like it. I want to be really busy, or I'm out being really busy and I wish I had time to rest. I don't like this. So this is a third line who feels trapped in their own patterns. And so they keep on banging into something on the outside to try and adjust them through meeting other rhythms. And of course, it's a trial and error process. In the exaltation, we have compulsiveness that can be limited in its negative effect through flights of imagination. Though still stressful, they do not lead to action. Surrender to the limitations of a fixed rhythm through the empowerment of the imagination. This is the best approach for someone who has the 5 in the third line. In those moments when they assume that their fixed rhythm is not correct, that it is a mistake, they can imagine what it would be like to do something else. And there's a great power in this. When they're flat on their back, they can dream. Or while they're running around being busy, they can dream. They can put another fixed rhythm into their mind and sink into that. It's better for them to imagine being on holiday whilst they are running around, if that is their rhythm, instead of taking that holiday. Better for them to imagine being busy when they're lying down instead of getting up and doing something. Much healthier for them. Logic actually requires an enormous amount of imagination. It's rooted in the talent process, after all. Without imagination, logic can never work. So much of the logic that we process in our lives, we process at the imagination level, making imaginative constructs in our mind to see within our imagination whether logic resonates for us or not. Here, imagination is an opportunity for the third line in that moment of seeing that their rhythm is not correct for them or is a mistake, to allow them to simply work it out. It's the rhythm. Don't change it, but go into your imagination to wherever it is you want to go. This is the healthy side of this process. The collective is always sharing experience and always sharing experiments. But that doesn't mean that those that have that information around them, that they can ever take it in and participate in that. I mean, normally we can't, because there are just too many of us, and there are just too many experiments and too many experiences. So we can't physically get to do all of these things, so we can be quite voyeuristic in that process by having an inner voyeurism. And inside we can imagine what the experience would look like for us. This is the root of creative expression, in the sense that out of this fantasy, out of this imagination, can come a creative project, can come a way in which you can describe the collective process to the other as a fact or as fiction. No, but it's the fantasy, it saves you so much trouble. It's like the 41st gate and the 30th gate. They go between the root center and the sacral center. It's the experiential way. The 41st gate is the gate of sexual fantasy, but that doesn't mean it ever actually has to have the sex. The 30th gate is in the emotional system and can become very obsessed with the sex part. The 41 is protected because it can fantasize any role at all without needing to actualize any of them. And yet, at the same time, it can gain through that voyeurism and insight into its own nature and into the possibilities of things. Remember, the collective really likes to get access to anything that it can. So this imagination is a way of using the energy. If you really get into your fantasy, if you're really tapping the energy resource, and yet at the same time, you're waiting. People kind of often have the idea that when they wait, they're doing nothing. And this is just not so. You're always doing, we're always in movement. This is the nature of being in the cosmos on a planet that is hurtling through space at however many miles a minute. You know, we are always in movement. There's always something going on. But while you're always moving, you're also always waiting. You know, these two things can be together in that process. In the detriment, the moon cannot stand still, unable to surrender and at odds with one's own pattern. These are people who just can't lie there and try to get into their mental fantasy space and disappear into a nice little story. They just can't do it. They have to jump up, they have to break the pattern, and then they have to suffer the consequences because this is trial and error, bonds made and broken. They will have to return to the patterns that are natural for them. Given everything that we're learning about how important it is to enter into connections with the other correctly, perhaps you can see how profoundly important it is for this 5th gate to enter correctly into every process in order for all of us to benefit. Through the 5th gate activation, we get to see the cellular pattern from the microcosm brought up to the macrocosm. These patterns are essential for us, and it is essential that they are established correctly and maintained in order for the whole global cell to be healthy. And that really can't happen until each and every one of those 5s is living out their nature according to their definition, type, and authority. What happens in the detriment is that they will constantly break their rhythm, discover that it is not good for them either. And they will eventually come back in their process after repeating the mistakes over and over again about breaking their rhythm. They will go back to the natural rhythm and then they will suffer with that. With the 3rd line, there's always inside this sort of sense of, is this really what it is? Or is this a mistake? I'm not sure I like this rhythm. I think I'm going to change it. I don't think it's right for me. What to do? Because the other side of this, this is a little bit the hyperbole from Ra, but there's always the other side of it that says the 3rd line is incredible because the 3rd line is so resilient, and the 3rd line is built and equipped to bump into things, to make these mistakes, to learn through these mistakes and discover what works and what doesn't work. And sometimes some of these 3rd lines can seem really heavy and really kind of like, 3rd line, bonds made and broken. Yeah, but just look at the discoveries that are made through our 3rd lines and how incredible they are that they just keep getting up. You know, so wow for the 3rd lines. Mercury moved into gate 5 at 5:14 this morning. This is our current sun gate, of course, so I'm not going into that very much. The moon is still in gate 54. It's been there since 12 minutes past 1 this morning, the gate of ambition in the root center. And next it moves up to gate 61, the head center, the pressure to know the inner truth, the mysteries, or to know that some things can never be known, which can bring a melancholy with it, of course, because this is individuality. And we know that melancholy can be a feature of their experience. At 21:46, the moon moves into gate 60 and it's meeting Venus, which moved there at just after 10 past 3 this morning. And it's joining Pluto. So they're having a big party. planetary party in gate 60. Pluto's been there for a while, of course. Gate 60 is the gate of limitation, the gate of acceptance. It's more individuality. And so there is a mutative potential. It is the format gate in the channel of mutation. So I guess clue is in the title. And then tomorrow morning at 7:57, the moon moves into gate 41. This is the gate of decrease and contraction. And it is the only start codon in our DNA. And it signifies the start of the Rave New Year. This is the gate of fantasy that we've just heard about through the context of the third line in the fifth gate, fantasy and imagination. It's a root gate, and it is the pressure for the human experiential way. And now stand by for a shameless plug from your sponsor, the sun. The sun is on its journey towards gate 41. At the online Rave Festival in January, I'm going to be telling the story of gate 60. Mutation to transformation. And I'll also talk about the other gates that are leading up to the new year. And I explain why, from a human design perspective, we don't make any New Year's resolutions until we reach gate 41 on the 21st of January. And would you like to join me? You are invited. And you are informed now of what I'm going to be doing. Julia and Veronica, Natalie, Pavaka and Nizag, they, together with their teams, they've pulled together a wonderful program for the festival. And as I say, 18th to the 21st of January. There is a link to the festival website somewhere in the description of this video. And there should also be a code that you can use to get 10% off the ticket price. And at the same time, support me. So I would be very much appreciative if you decided to go that route. Okay, shameless plug over. That is gate 3. We are moving into, no, it's not gate 3, it's line 3. God, see, that was quick. It's a very fast transition. It's line 3 in gate 5. And yeah, that's it. We'll be back for a fourth line tomorrow. And until then, as always, love yourself and go gently.